Okay, we're going to talk about bulletin boards today, and that is an essential element in your classroom for teaching with your students. So there are several different types of bulletin boards that are available, and these are just some pictures of some of them. I will not go into detail on those because we need to cover some more material. But it's just a vinyl or a cork tack board that's used to display papers and your teaching tools. And it, like I said, it comes in various colors, various sizes, different types. So you can have a variety of bulletin boards to choose from. But the bulletin board is the teacher's most flexible aid. And the first thing is because it does stimulate curiosity. Your students love to come in at the beginning of every month when you put it up and see what new things you have placed on your bulletin board. And so it stimulates curiosity. It provides information as well. If you have a certain subject area that you want to really emphasize in your class, you can put this information up on your bulletin board. It also shows a simple idea. And what I mean by that, a simple statement that you're trying to get across in class. Maybe even in Bible class, a verse that you've been working on in your class, you could put up that Bible verse and reinforce it for that month. It also displays children's work, and children really love to have their work displayed on the bulletin boards. Many times when I taught second grade, I used that as a incentive for children that were struggling with maybe a grade, that they would be able to get their paper put up on the bulletin board. And especially they like this around PTF time, where the parents come in and meet with teachers. They enjoy having their work up on the board so their parent can see it. So it is a good place to display their work. Another thing is that you can display seasonal themes with it. And each month has a theme. As you go through it, you think of September as opening school, and October, the fall is coming in, November, Thanksgiving, of course, December, Christmas, January, we think of snow, February, President's Day or Valentine's Day, March, you think of the windy time and kites, and April, we think of flowers coming up and the rain showers. Of course, we have snow showers here, don't we? But then May with also springtime, but also Memorial Day, and also another thing would be the letting of, the end of school. So those are some themes that you can display on these bulletin boards. And then you should use your bulletin board as motivating Bible-based values as well. Usually in our classrooms here, we have 3 bulletin boards. We have a good grades, we have something that goes along with the subject line that is being taught, and then also we have a Bible-based bulletin board. Most of the classrooms have a large 4x12 board in it, which can be divided into 3 sections, or it can be divided into 2 sections. So that would just provide 2 bulletin boards. Sometimes some of the classrooms have 3 with a smaller 4x4 board in it. But whatever your situation is, try to get at least 2 types of boards into your classroom. Just don't make one big huge board with one theme each month. Okay, steps to an effective bulletin board. The first thing is that it should have a single theme. You say, well, that's common sense. Well, you just don't want to have too many things going on in that bulletin board. You wouldn't want a math idea interwoven with a science idea. Keep it with a single theme. Next thing is to choose your colors wisely. Some colors blend in with each other. Like if you used a tan on top of a brown cloth background, you use tan paper, or tan letters on a brown background, it's going to blend in. You need colors that are opposite that really pop out on the board. And sometimes people are afraid to use just a plain white board, and there's no problem with that. Just have a nice decorative border around it. But choose your colors wisely. Another thing, be selective in material that you put up. Make sure that it's top quality visuals that you put up. And sometimes students actually do use material as their background. Make sure that it's not too busy, that if you have a pattern, it has to be very minute, because that pattern can just dominate the board. It can be way, way too busy. So make sure you have a really subtle background. Also, you need to leave margins around your board. The sides should be equal on either side, and the bottom border should be anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch wider than your top border that runs along the top of your board. Another thing is to keep the board alive. If you choose good grades papers and put them up that month, don't leave them up all month. Change the good grades papers weekly. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about a theme-based board like a Bible verse or something that you're teaching in class. I'm talking about good grades boards to keep them alive. But also keep them alive by changing them each month according to the season of the year. Don't keep one bulletin board up for several months. Okay. 1 month is enough. All right. There are 2 types of bulletin board arrangements. One is called the formal board, and that is where everything is in exact proportion. There doesn't look like there's any confusion on board. And if you're new at putting up boards, this is the safest board to put up because it will always look neat. The downside with a formal board is that it tends to look boring. Okay, it can be boring, but I tend to think that if you use your colors wisely and make those colors pop out, that it won't be boring. The next one is the informal board, and you can see how with the crayons on this board, they're all over the place. That's informal. Also, the flag is closer to the margin, but they did keep a nice margin on the other side about equal distance. But it's a little bit more weighty on one side, and then with all these crayons, it does balance itself out. But you have to be very careful with the informal board in that it can tend to look sloppy. Okay, so if you put up an informal board, pin it up first and step back and look at it and keep adjusting it before you put those staples in the board. Really, you should do that with all of your boards, but especially with an informal board. Okay, now this just looks like a mess, and it is a mess. Okay, and it's some things that we're going to go back over, but you know, your upper margin might be too wide. Your letters are not straight. Your spacing in your words is wrong. Your spelling, oh wow. A teacher should never have a spelling error on anything that they have as far as their visuals. The margins are not equal on either side. The background might be too busy. The visual might be sloppy. The lower margin might be too narrow. Maybe if you're doing this for a bulletin board for a class and the teachers required you to put your name or class there, and you forget to put it on, you can be docked for that. Okay. But let's look at this. This is the bulletin board grading scale that I use whenever I grade bulletin boards. And I do look at their title. I look at their spelling. If there are any spelling errors at all, I automatically dock them 10 points. Okay? Because a teacher should have correct spelling, straightness, making sure everything is straight, and that is only obtained by you putting those letters up, you know, with pins first before you actually staple them in. I've taken a laser beam before and laser beamed it across my bulletin board to put those letters up straight. You can also use a piece of string or the blue painter's tape. Just measure down on either side of your bulletin board and put it across there, and then put your letters on it. But always step back and look at your letters and make sure that they're straight. And then also your color, make sure that the color doesn't blend in. Another thing that I look at is the spacing with the letters and the words. Make sure that there's no big gap between letters within a word, or that they're not too close. Sometimes I have students that just jam them right up close to each other. So make sure that they're spaced very neatly. The margins, we've gone over equal sides and then a proper width of upper and lower, which the lower, I'll repeat it again, should be 1/4 to 1/2 wider. There's something about looking at something, a visual that, or a bulletin board, where that border should be just up a little bit higher on the bottom half. And then your balance and unity. What I mean by that is, after you've placed your board up there, does it look like it's complete? Does it look balanced? You can say, I don't think I need to add anything. I don't need to take anything away from this bulletin board. It feels complete. So there's unity and balance in that board. If you don't feel like that when you step back from the board, just keep looking at it. Have somebody else come in and look at it and say, what is missing on this board, or what do I need to take off? It's okay to get advice with your board. And then your visual neatness is a big factor, and the color value. Sometimes students maybe use chalk on their visuals, which chalk is fine, but it needs to pop out. It needs to not be so light that it doesn't show up on the bulletin board, that it's too soft. Okay, children love bright colors, so I usually would use, if I used a chalk, I would use the really bold, bright colors, using it with chalk, or paints, or magic markers. Okay. Another thing is, the message of the board is clearly communicated. Don't put up some quote up there that the students have no idea what you're talking about. Okay. So make sure the message of the board is clearly communicated. And many times in the elementary, it's just maybe just a couple of words, but in high school it is more complicated. Okay, so just make sure that that message is clearly communicated. Then your name tag on there, that you did the board and what class it's for, and then your board up and taken down on time. That is another thing that I grade on with doing bulletin boards, making sure that it's up on time, but it's also taken down at the end of the month. Another thing with this that I grade on is that there's no staples in the floor as you take it down, that it's left down neatly. So those are just the things that I grade on when I'm grading bulletin boards, but it's important for you to do on a basis when you become a teacher as well. So store up good learning habits this year and have a neat board with your bulletin boards. Are there any questions over the bulletin boards? No? Okay. Okay, we're going to go over next teaching art in a high school classroom. And so we're going to start off with this lecture. It's called The Christian Teaching of Art. And I want to give you the definition of art. Art is the process of producing a visual image or object using the expressive art elements in harmony with the principles of art in order to communicate a concept and to give aesthetic pleasure. This quote is taken from a a pamphlet by Bob Jones University with teaching art. So this is where I got this quote from. That is their definition of what art is. Art is the process of producing a visual image or object using the expressive art elements in harmony with the principles of art in order to communicate a concept and to give aesthetic pleasure. Okay, we'll go into more detail with this as we go on. We'll go over the art elements and the principles of art, and that'll kind of conceal what those are. You know what they are, you probably just don't realize it. But we're doing art to communicate a message. Okay, God's standard in art. God's creation far surpasses even the best of anything that we can do. And I just have some pictures here of things that God has created, the beauty that God has created in our everyday life. Look at the detail on those flowers. It's just amazing, God's creation. Look at even some of these bugs. Look at the detail on that bottom bug. I don't even know what kind it is, but it's very detailed and colorful. And so God has all these details, and his creation far outpasses anything that we could do. But God does have a twofold standard in our creations, okay, that we create for aesthetic pleasure. This standard requires excellence in these two things: composition, and moral tone. Those two areas are very important. Composition is how the painting or the object or whatever is created is composed, what elements it's composed of, and the principles that are made up with it, but also the moral tone. There's so much out there today that is not good moral tone in art. Okay, so it has to have both of those things to have God's standard of excellence. To be deficient in one or both of these standards is to promote humanism in art. So if you have a good moral standard, but your composition is way off, okay, then it's not to God's standard. That's a lot with the modern art today. I remember when I was taking art classes in college that we were sitting there painstakingly drawing different things that the teacher had placed in the center of the room, and he came in and he said, "Well, I just saw in the paper today that a man put down a canvas, he threw paint all over the canvas, took his Volkswagen Beetle and ran back and forth over it and made the tire tracks in the paint, and he sold it for $250,000. There was no composition there, was there? Okay. Moral tone, well, there was no composition. He just, whatever he felt like, whatever you feel like. That's humanism, okay? So, but then on the other hand, if there's a good composition but it has a poor moral tone, if it doesn't have a good moral tone, it's humanistic, okay? So both of those things have to be there to have a God's standard. Now, art in the classroom should guide the student in a gradual development of these following things. They should be able to identify the 7 elements of art. They should be able to identify the principles of art with these elements. You're developing, sometimes even in 7th grade, I have found that they cannot cut properly. So you're developing motor skills with them, or dexterity, tying knots, say like in a craft like macrame, teaching them how to tie. So you're developing those small motor skills and dexterity, and you're teaching them to be able to use a variety of tools and medium in art, paint brushes, stamps, crayons, clay, paper mache, all these different tools that they can use in the art field. You're teaching them skill in all of these areas. Glue. You would never give glue to a K3, 4, or 5 student, okay? You would give them a glue stick, but not glue, liquid glue. Just a little, but they learn. And eventually they learn how to use glue, or eventually they learn how to use special scissors for cutting out with the pointed edge. They are not using blunt scissors, but you're teaching them these tools and mediums to use. But also, it's skill in using their creative imagination. Okay, their creative imagination. It spurs them to be creative. That's the one thing about art, is that each project is unique to that individual. Shouldn't be all the same. They should be unique to that individual's personality, their talent, their skills. So art in the classroom should guide the students in all of these skills. Another thing, art in the classroom develops the student's aesthetic ability in 4 areas. Now, aesthetic is what we view, what we see, what is pleasing as we view it. He learns to understand the visual language of art that's used by artists in communicating their ideas to the viewer. Many times in history, you learn a lot about that era of history by looking at their art. Okay, that artist painted what was going on during that century or that era. And so you can learn a lot from looking at old paintings and what was going on back in the day by viewing their art. He also develops his own creative ability in response to his surroundings. Children will draw, or even high school students will draw what they're familiar with. Okay, if they love horses, they'll probably draw horses. Okay, if they're a dog lover, they'll draw dogs. If they're into, say, the Civil War or World War II, the boys will draw battleships and guns, and so that they draw and they create what they're familiar with their surroundings and what they like. They also learn how to create and evaluate art by God's twofold standard, which is composition and good moral tone. So they should learn that in high school. Okay, and then he should develop his own aesthetic enjoyment from his creative work and the artworks of others. He should be able to look at his fellow students and enjoy what they've created as well as what he has created. Okay. Okay, the next lecture would be teaching art to students. Okay, what do we do in teaching art to students? Well, the developmental stages of a student's art, there's certain categories when you're talking about elementary art, but we're talking about high school art right now. So, but it is their maturity level and their exposure to handling art materials. Those two things categorize their abilities, okay? And a lot does have to do with their maturity level, okay? And then maybe they never have handled special clay tools before, and they've got to learn how to handle those tools with carving with clay. So those two areas are vital in their developmental stage. And then what should a teacher's goals be for an art class? Some of these are going to be repeated, but you should nurture the students' creativity in art. Don't ever let them copy something that you do, okay? Because students will copy you, okay? And we all have days when we're not very creative, but we're going to go over some things that you can do with that. But don't let a student copy another student or copy something that you have done. I know when I taught art, I might show them what I had done as an example, but then I put it away because they would always copy what I had done, so I wanted it to be their original work, okay? Another thing is that you should challenge and motivate students to think, okay? It's making them think and grapple with problems that they encounter in art. How can I draw that and make it look better? What can I do? Or if they're tying the knot, what did I do wrong with this macrame piece, or lacing or sewing? What did I do wrong? And figure it out, grapple with the problem. Another thing is teach and use the elements and principles of art. Point it out to the students. They should know them by high school level, okay? They may not be as familiar with the principles of art, but they should know the elements of art, and what they are. And but reinforce those as you do teach art in the class. And then remember to develop the motor skills. If there's some skill, maybe you're doing pottery, and develop that skill of molding with their hands, or maybe it's painting or watercolors. Watercolors is completely different from painting, okay? And learning how to develop those motor skills with these different media. And then introduce art mediums. Maybe they never have worked with watercolors before, and you teach them the terms of wash and teach them the different types of brushes that they need to use and how they apply the color on the piece of paper. What kind of paper to use? Okay, so you have all these different things that you need to teach them with a new medium. And then teach the characteristics of and how to work with art materials. So it's good to not just stick with something that you're comfortable with, but get out of your comfort zone and try something else that is new. Maybe you've never done calligraphy before, doing calligraphy with them. But teach the characteristics of and how to work with art materials. Okay, and then establishing good work habits. Don't let them be sloppy with their work, okay? Don't let them just jump up out of class and, go throw something away and then hit somebody's desk. It's good work habits of thinking of others. And so establish those good work habits in the art class of sharing tools or sharing other things that you have in class in making the art projects. So establish those good work habits. Okay, what is the end result to accomplish in teaching art? Well, it's teaching the students that in doing their best uses their abilities in bringing glory to God. Anything that they do, it should be humanistic, but it should be able to be presented to glorify God. Whether therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. That's 1 Corinthians 10:31. And you apply that in an art situation. Okay, now we want to look at some aspects of teaching art. And with teaching art, you're going to have a vocabulary with them. They're going to learn new terms. So you're developing these terms. Maybe they've never heard of the word batik or warp and wealth. Or maybe they've never really thought about what translucent was or opaque. So you're using these different art terms that they're not used to, but you're developing their vocabulary, and it enables them to see the concept. Okay, There's a lot of art terms out there. So develop that vocabulary with them. And then age does not mean that they understand it. So you might say, well, they should understand how to do this, but they may not, even in junior high, okay? They may not know what the term like mottle means. What does it mean? M-O-T-T-L-E. What does that term mean? What am I supposed to do with that? You know, and you have to explain it to them and show them how to use that. So their age does not mean that they understand it, but exposure to art or art media does help their understanding. So you develop the technique of using this vocabulary, of introducing them to different art media and exposure to art, and it helps them grow. Now, getting started with a project should generate creativity. And I find that a lot of times that's the most difficult things with students, is to get started with the project. I don't know how many times I would hear, I don't know what to do, or I don't know what to draw, or I don't, you know, can you do this for me? No, it's not my art project. It's your art project, you know. But you can give them ideas, and we're going to go over this in just a minute. But you're going to give them art. You can give them ideas of what to do, but never do it for the student. Make them grapple with the problem. Make them work. Make them think. It's their activity, and it should generate creativity as they get started. And then individual work means that it's unique. You know, God made each of us different. We're each a unique individual. There's no two people alike. So it doesn't matter that their work doesn't look like their neighbor's work. Okay, that's their work. Okay, and you kind of have to get that into them because they'll compare each other, you know. So, and then another thing is to have a structured curriculum in your art class, because that will give you mastery and knowledge. If you have a plan and have a structured curriculum, know where you're going, that will help your students and help you as a teacher to master different art projects and medium and even the vocabulary and terms that will help you in teaching. Okay, motivating your students. As I've said, we all have days when we are just kind of like blank. We need ideas. And here's some suggestions for you in giving your students ideas when they have those days of non-creativity, okay? Sometimes I would use actual objects or visual pictures in the classroom. Whenever I took drawing in high school, my art teacher had file cabinets filled with pictures by category, and we could go through those files and pull out a picture and find something that we would like to draw. And that's such a good idea. It was such a useful tool to have all of those visuals. But also using actual objects, have them look at something, and that will spur an idea. Another thing is the ideas from songs, stories, or poems. Maybe you're learning, going over some poem in a high school class. Maybe you could do the art project based around that poem. Verbal interchanges with the students, giving them suggestions. Sometimes they just need a hint. Why don't you try this? Or have you tried this? Try this technique. Just giving them a hint sometimes will help them get started with the project. Another thing is to use art projects in conjunction with material that's being taught in a subject area. I remember one of our teachers was teaching the planets, and so for her art project, she made all of the planets, and the students, or they made them as a class with paper mache, and then they also painted them. So it was a, you know, like a month-long art project, you know, that they all participated in, but I can guarantee you they remember those planets. okay, because she intertwined it with the science class with art, and they participated in it. Okay, some things for organizing your classroom. Always make sure that the desks are cleared and covered. Only covered if it's something that is really messy, okay? If it's just, you know, there's no paints involved or anything, you don't need to, but just make sure the desks are cleared and covered. Don't have anything else on the desk, no books, nothing, okay? Another thing, no obstacles in the aisles or under desk. I remember one time a student got up, we were doing some painting, and she tripped over a book bag, another student's book bag, and you can imagine what happened with the paint that was in her jar. Okay, she was going to wash out her brushes. So make sure that there's no obstacles in the aisles and or under the desk. Another thing is have a procedure for handing out materials. That will make your life so much easier as a teacher, is to have this procedure down so that whenever you're passing out the materials, it flows smoothly. Have a traffic pattern for discarding trash or gathering unused materials. Make them stick to that traffic pattern. Maybe they need smocks for messy projects. It's okay to bring in an old shirt, or maybe you have paint aprons to give them. I mean, even a garbage bag with the arms and the neck cut out, that's fine with little kids, you know. But I mean, high school students, they would probably want an apron or bring an old shirt for home. But have a smock for messy projects. Okay, and then have a cleanup procedure. What are they going to do when they finish with their art project? Where are they going to put it? What do they need to do with the materials that they just used? Okay, if they have paint brushes, maybe they need to, you know, rinse those out and dry them out, put them away, putting caps back on paint. So have a cleanup procedure. Have a storage plan for tools and completed art projects. If you're going to do a paper mache art project in your class, I'm just using this as an example, where are you going to put it? It's not going to be dry by the end of the hour. Where are you going to store these projects, okay? So have a plan where you're going to put these projects when they are completed. Now, I'm going to just give you some art, what I call tidbits, okay? These are just some things that I have learned over the years. We know that artists are creators, but anyone can destroy something, but it takes effort to create. So on that note, never allow students to touch another student's artwork. And they shouldn't really even destroy their artwork if they get upset about it, you know. I've seen students, you know, crumple up their paper, you know, may I start over, you know. Don't let them do that. Make them look at it. Don't let them crumple it. Make them look at it and see how they can fix that art project, okay? Demonstrations in class. Make sure that you're comfortable with the project as a teacher. Never go cold turkey. Better try it at home first. Make sure that you know how to do the project. And then do a start to finish demonstration explaining each step if that is applicable, okay? Sometimes you're making craft projects and you can go through step by step how to make that art project. And do not let the students copy your work. Each project should be individualized, okay? Don't let them copy you at all, no matter what the project is.